I'd like to introduce Karen Hull, who's our NID Board President and Division 3 Director, representing South Nevada County and Placer County.
Thank you all so much for having me here today. I am just honored to be here. What I am going to talk about today is really a brief history of NID and our system, and then the focus of today's conversation is on climate change and the impact to NID, our water supply and service to our customers. So I want to start, though, tell you a little bit about myself. I was born and raised in Sacramento. I'm one of 8 kids, and I attended Sac State to get my bachelor's and master's degree in business administration. I spent most of my career at UC Davis, where I worked my way up through the ranks and ultimately became Associate Vice Chancellor of Business Services, and then became the Associate Vice Chancellor of Human Resources, overseeing human resources for the Davis campus. And I also have a flower farm. I grow peonies and ranunculus, and I have a donkey rescue. And I am super honored to be representing our community on the NID board. So how many of you are NID customers? Well, it looks like almost everybody. And I think this reflects the importance of NID to our community. I'm going to talk about the history here. When NID was formed, the roots of it actually go back to the gold rush era. So back in the 1860s, early miners and ranchers created the dam system and the canal system that we have today, that infrastructure. Fast forward to the early 1900s, and the leaders of Nevada City and Grass Valley could see that unless we had secure water for the future, that the community couldn't thrive and grow. And so they made a tremendous amount of effort to obtain water rights, to resuscitate canals, fortify dams, and create an infrastructure that could then be licensed, and we became a district in 1921. Placer County was added to the district in 1927, so those upstarts in Placer County have been around for a long time. So we have 2 components to our system. One is our watershed area, and that is 70,000 acres. We own 10,000 of those acres. The remaining land is held privately or by government agencies. This is the source water for all of our customers and includes 9 storage reservoirs, 270,000 acre feet of water. So that sounds like a huge amount of water, right? But it's a relatively small amount of water storage considering the size of dams in California. We have 24 miles of conveyance that takes water from the high country and moves it to our powerhouses, which we have 7 of, and we also have 19 campgrounds that host 300,000 visitors annually. So that watershed, I'll talk a little bit more about the importance of watershed, but that is a critical component to having high quality, pristine water. The other primary component is our service territory. So that is 287,000 acres of land. That is a lot of territory. We have 6,500 raw water customers, and they are served through almost 500 miles of canal system. We then also have almost 20,000 treated water customers that are served through 400 miles of pipeline. So if you stood on the Mexico-California border and you drove all the way to Ashland, Oregon, you'd only be at about 830 miles. So it gives you a sense of the scale that NID operates on in terms of how they are serving our customers 900 miles of cumulative canals and treated water pipelines. This number is reflected in the fact that we are the second largest water district in the state of California in geographic size, and we are one of the most complex because of the amount of territory that we need to cover in order to support our customer base. I will also emphasize that the district was started as an irrigation district. It was not until the 1970s that treated water came into service. And so that heritage of irrigation water and supporting an agricultural community is really at the root and heart and soul of NID, and something that's a high priority for us to continue to support. We have 6 water treatment plants, too, across the 5 in Nevada County, 1 in Placer County. So now I'm going to go on to the plan for water. So we have known at the district that one of the things that we lacked was this long-term view of what is the water supply going to look like in the future. And this has become even more critical as we looked at climate change. And so what we have done is we're in a 2-year process. We're at the very tail end of that process, so we should wrap up by January. And we hired consultants to help us evaluate supply and demand, hydrology, and the impact of climate change. Hydrology is the flow of water at and below the surface of the earth. And it's really the crux of the matter, because how much water comes through the hydrology of our land is reflected in how much water actually goes into streams. It goes into the aquifer, the cracked, fractured aquifer, and then also into our reservoirs. And the other thing is the district, there's a lot of climate models. These climate models are applied specifically to our area. So it's not we're using a model that was applied to Saudi Arabia or Thailand. We are using models that are for Northern California in our district. And we have excellent consultant support with that part of the effort because it's highly, highly technical. So I'm going to go over some facts about climate change. The first is that between 1937 and 2007, we experienced a 40% increase in precipitation. And this is one of 5 wet peak periods that have occurred over the last 1,100 years. So when you think about what I think everyone in this room is accustomed to, we're accustomed to this wet climate. That's what we think about when we go to the nursery. In a lot of ways, the nurseries have become better at giving us native options, but a lot of us are still gravitate toward that wet climate plant scheme. Also, these extended wet periods are followed by extended dry periods. So the extended dry periods can last for 10, 20, or more years, and most experts think we've shifted out of the wet period into the dry period. So reality check for NID and everybody here. This is the new state of affairs. So the impact, when you shift from a wet period to a dry period, you can experience a 40 to 50% shift in precipitation. We also know that a primary element of climate change is warming temperatures. The temperatures began to be evaluated and measured back in the late 1800s, and so we have a lot of data. And it shows that the air temperature was pretty flatline, and then industrialization happened in the kind of early 1900s, and you start seeing the air temperature increase. Then you have post-World War II and more industrialization and the air temperatures going up. And then you have global industrialization and temperatures going up again, and you see them continuing to rise. What that means for us as a water district and a region is that we will have less snowpack, and less snowpack means less water in our reservoirs. Another aspect is that the consultant initially said we might not have less total precipitation, but it will come more in the form of rain versus snow. And it will have fewer storms, but they will be bigger storms. And haven't we seen that lately, right, with those atmospheric rivers? And so a key question is, where will those atmospheric rivers hit? Because if you are in the trajectory of an atmospheric river, probably fantastic, you're getting rain. But if you're not, that storm goes 100 miles north or 100 miles south, you can be in deep trouble. So I want to show you a graph that really demonstrates this nicely. So, and this points to some of the challenges that NID has. So here is the Bowman Lake precipitation. This is the number of inches of precipitation going from 0 to 140. And here's the calendar year starting July 1st through June 30th. And here we have, in this blue boxed area, that is the 137-year average of our precipitation as it goes through the calendar year and peaks there at June 30th. Then you have the yellow line is the year 2020, 2021. Green is 2021, 22. Purple is 22, 23, so this past year. And red is our line to date. So what you see is, I want to just point out these lines. So the yellow line total says 34 inches. The average is 69 inches. So in a given year, NID is 50% of our average, and the purple year last year is 40% more than our average. So this points out very vividly the dramatic swings that NID has to be able to deal with, and has to deal with more in a more concerted effort in the future, because this kind of volatility is going to be part of our ongoing future. The other thing I want to point out is that another impact of climate change. So in the yellow line, 2021, you see we got no precipitation here through, really, we don't hardly have anything through the end of November, 1st of December. We get a little bit, and then it flatlines. But what happened here, we got really nice cold storms. So we had a great snowpack. We were very optimistic about what our storage would be because we had such a great snowpack. But when the snow started melting, guess what? We didn't have a great runoff, and that's because of this factor. We had a bone dry fall, and when that water melted, or the snow melted, it just sucked right into the earth. So that is another, and that really took the district by surprise. It's the first time in recent memory that we had seen that kind of thing occurring. And so now we're on alert. Uh-oh, what's the fall like, and what's our snowpack? And just as a quick statement, the snowpack is like a giant ice cube in the high country, and it slowly melts into our reservoirs. So that's what we're counting on, and I'll show you in a future slide on that. The other point I had made is the impact of these atmospheric rivers. So in 2021-22, we had, this is an atmospheric river. This is what you all fondly refer to as Snowmageddon. Then we had nothing, and we were a little nervous about this year until we got these beautiful spring storms coming in that were nice and cold and added to the snowpack. But my point here is, you can see so dramatically what the impact of those atmospheric rivers were. You know, we could easily have ended up just flatlining or flatlining somewhere down there. That's what our future holds, unfortunately. One of the other impacts of climate change is to our forested lands and the impact of potential catastrophic fire. I know that's something that all of you are very concerned about living in the greater Nevada City, Grass Valley area. Our watershed is completely in that high country forested area, and so that is a big risk for us. And I will say, both PCWA and El Dorado Irrigation District both had major wildfire go through their water districts. Just like a 3-mile stretch of canal that was taken out in the El Dorado. It was a Caldor fire that took that out. Cost them $20 million to repair, and they were without water, so they had to expedite the work on that. So the cost and the risk is huge for the district. So I'm showing you this. You may have read a press release about the South Yuba Canal. So here you see this is a structure that was really created way back when. It consists of large wooden large wooden timbers that hold up the flume. Here a tree has crash landed right through it. We bought this system from our friends at PG&E and just closed escrow on it. And although we said, gee, do we really want it? Could PG&E keep it? They actually wanted to divest that asset. And so we had a choice probably about 15 years ago to either let someone else buy it or buy it through NID. So we did end up buying it for $1. So not a big investment dollar-wise, but now we have to address this. So you might say, well, why did you buy it anyway? It is the conduit for water for Nevada County, except for the South County, which is served through the Bear River system. So we had a choice of somebody else owning it or us owning it. We needed to own that because we need to serve water reliably to our customers here. But it's very vulnerable. It has elevated wood flumes. It's 8 miles of that canal system are on a steep, slide-prone hillside, and it's going to be costly to mitigate. So I'll talk a little bit about what we're doing in watershed and forest health to try to mitigate that, but there are other things that we'll need to do. So now moving on to the climate modeling. So what we basically we're trying to, we selected computer models that best replicate our area. And we're looking at the impact of climate change on water supply and water demand. Not knowing what's going to happen in the future, we have to model multiple scenarios. And so we have, on the supply side, modeling a wet condition, a median condition, and a dry condition. And then on the customer demands, we have low demand, median demand, and high demand. Low demand is considered to be a 20% reduction in our demand. Median is basically our baseline. And then high demand is 1.5 times baseline. So I'm going to go into some specific implications for climate change that are backed up by the data provided by the consultants. I've been looking at this data for about a year now, and when the first time the consultants presented that data they presented kind of the concept, et cetera, I thought to myself, what in the world are they talking about? So, after a year, I pretty much understand what we're talking about, and but what the graphs I'm going to show you, they're pretty complicated. I chose to put them in because we have some climate experts among us, and I knew our fellow data heads, I'm a data head, I thought data heads will want to see the graph. But for people, particularly in the back of the room, it's unlikely that you're going to be able to see the detail, so I'm going to try to explain what's in the graph, but if you can't see it, don't worry. It looks like spaghetti noodles, don't worry about it. The takeaway is really on the preceding slide. So the first is we have to be able to adjust to big swings between wet and dry periods, and these wet and dry periods may be short-term or they may be very long-term. Okay, so here is the slide. This is modeling the water that will go into our watersheds between the years of 2022 and 2071. So that's that 50-year time horizon that's part of the plan for water. Here is the acre feet going into the system, and here is the years, so 2022 out here to 2071. And the blue line is the wet periods, the green is median, and the red is dry, and then the gray is this dashed line here. And of course, our historical average, the gray line, was volatile. You don't have it flat like that, but this just shows on average that we had about 1,600 acre feet of water coming into the system annually. So a couple takeaways from this. If you look at the red, the dry case, there are only 5 years here, 4 years actually, that are above our historic average. So that dry period is pretty frightening. And if you look at the number of years of consecutive below average, this is about a 15-year period here. You also see, look at how these peaks are so much higher than our average. You know, our average might have come up to here, or you know, our peak average, but now you have these extremes that are reflective of the atmospheric rivers. In all scenarios, you have extended dry periods, so extended drought. So even in the wet condition, you have extended dry periods. So questions about that slide? I know I'm just making people so happy. Okay, so we can expect less snowpack. All right, so this is spaghetti, but don't worry about it. This is the unimpaired flow from Canyon Creek going into Bowman Lake. This is the CFS, so the cubic feet per second. And then this is October 1st to September 31st. So we mark this based on when we're getting precipitation in the system. Again, we have historic is this gray line, dry is orange, green is median, and blue is wet. So a couple things you can see immediately from this is that you can't really see this, but the gray line under here is like this. This is water going into Bowman Lake, and it peaks. It starts to peak about May 1st and ends about June 1st. Then it slowly trickles down to about August 15th. So this reflects the melting of our snowpack. It starts about April 1st, and then it just slowly increases until it drops off all the way at mid-August. This just doesn't occur in the future, really. I mean, you've got a small melting of the snowpack here, but you have the majority of the precipitation coming here. So this is reflecting inflow. I just emphasize this. This is not snowpack falling. This is water going into Bowman Lake. And the challenge for us is, I mentioned earlier, we have relatively small reservoirs, and so they can only hold so much capacity, and that's coming earlier. So unless we make changes, we will have unmet demands. About 7% of our water is used by our treated water customers. So that's about 20,000 customers use about 7% of our water. About 93% of our water is used by raw water customers. So the state mandates that when you as a water district, when you prioritize who gets water, guess who comes first? Treated. Yes, treated always comes first. And then they have a hierarchy of who gets water beyond that, and it starts, secondary is animals, and then it is perennial crops, and then it's annual crops. And there's subcategories within that, but that's the basics of it. So the impact to this unmet demand really falls on raw water customers. Not that as treated water customers, you will still potentially have to cut back, but you'll always get water. We will always have that water for you. So this is unmet demand. This is the median unmet demand. We have charts for every condition, though, the wet condition, the median, and the dry. And this is the acre feet. By the way, an acre foot is 1 acre, 1 foot, filled with 1 foot of water. So here we have high demand, baseline demand, and low demand. So you can see that demand makes a huge difference, right, in the unmet demand. So here we're talking about 40,000 acre feet of unmet demand. That's the worst case, dry condition, high demand. But realistically, if you have parched soil, you're going to want to put more water on it. So that scenario isn't totally out of the realm of reality. But remember, we had only 270,000 acres of storage. So 40,000 acre feet short is a lot. So unmet demand is exacerbated during multi-year droughts, as you can imagine. So again, this is the worst 3-year consecutive drought that was identified in the model. It is the median climate baseline demand, so median climate / baseline demand. Here is the unmet demand in acre feet. Here are the years, 1, 2, 3. This is the cumulative unmet demand. So that's 130,000 acre feet of unmet demand for that 3-year drought period. But I feel very grateful that the district is actually, to our knowledge, we are way out front on modeling this than any other water district in California. It just happened to line up that we knew we needed to pursue the plan for water. Kind of the technology reached another milestone of quality in terms of predicting, and we were able to take advantage of that. So I'd like to think back that those early founders of NID, they had a vision and they did the hard work to prepare our community for what it is today. Without them, we probably wouldn't be sitting here, certainly not in our numbers. And so this is the challenge for the current NID board and management, to anticipate what that future is going to look like, build community support for changes that need to be made, to hear your voices about what's important, and take the required action. So we are looking at a number of options to address this issue, and I'm going to present some of those options for you. And the first is that we can raise Rawlins Reservoir. We put 53 feet there. That is the maximum storage increase that we can have at that location, but we could do something less. It would result in 50,000 acre feet of additional storage, so you can see that is quite dramatic and would have a big impact on our community. The initial cost estimate is $300 million without interest payments. This would be paid over 30 years. I will give you another bit of bad news. That cost estimate will probably increase because those numbers have not been, we need to start from scratch to assess that cost should we move forward with this estimate, or excuse me, option. We actually have selected that as an option to further evaluate, so that certainly is on the table. But there's lots of hurdles. We have CEQA, NEPA, all technical names for Environmental Quality Act regulations. We undoubtedly will have protests and water right hearings. And there's a lot of environmental impacts, both to recreation, there's financial impacts to our hydro and recreation facilities, and there are cultural, kind of cultural heritage there that will also need to be addressed. So the second option is to build Centennial Dam. This would add 110,000 acre feet of additional storage. It will cost close to $600 million minimally, and that's without interest payments. Again, ratepayers will need to fund this. Although the way we approach this as a district, we have to have projects, what they call shovel ready. And then when they are shovel ready, we go out and we canvass every nook and cranny for any kind of grant funding, federal support, state support. But we have to plan it as if we have to pay for it because we are the ultimate backstop for it. Again, this project has to be recosted to bring it to current day's dollars. It has the same level of hurdles as raising Rollins, though I would add that it has probably the additional hurdle. There are definitely more cultural sites there, and that Bear River is a pristine waterway that many people in the community treasure, so that's something that we would have to deal with. We are moving forward in modeling this option as well. But you saw from the slides that demand makes a huge difference in kind of shortfall. So one of the things that we can do is implement a drought contingency plan more frequently. What this means is when, you probably experienced this, we're doing fine for water storage up here, but the rest of the state is like in the doldrums and in terrible shape. So the state of California will require us to cut back on our water deliveries, so we're sending more through the environment and saving more in storage, so they mandate that. We could self-impose that on us. So let's say the state is looking good, but we're not. We could implement that drought contingency plan more frequently. It has a cost to our customers, of course, because they don't get the water that they might like to have. Another thing that we can do is to help customers better understand how they can use more efficient irrigation systems, water-wise planting. We have a rebate program right now for water storage tanks. We have, of course, high-efficiency toilets and shower heads and things like that. So we can really continue to push those kinds of programs out to try to save water in the system. This is another area that we're looking at pursuing, which is the watershed management. The watershed that doesn't result in huge savings to our water supply, or doesn't add a lot, but it could add up to 5 to 10% of water through our meadows. So our meadows, like our snowpack serves as a giant ice cube, well, our meadows serve as a giant sponge. And so the water goes into those meadows and it stays there and it slowly trickles down into our water system. The other thing it does, it's part of how we have pure, wonderful water through our systems, right? Don't we just have fabulous water? And so that meadow restoration work helps with that. The other thing is that we also have grants and are doing work on forest health and fuel reduction. This helps to protect the quality of that water as well as our infrastructure. So this is a real high priority for the district, and we'll look at how we can couple that with other types of changes that we might make. So renegotiate our FERC license is another option. FERC is the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, and FERC oversees our large hydro operations. And our license expired at least 10 years ago, maybe 15. And it's still pending. So when the FERC license was originally established, they had an environmental flow of about 7,000 acre-feet per year. The new FERC license is proposing, under normal rainfall years, a flow of 45,000 acre-feet. So the impact to so all of our analysis included that FERC flow. It had to, because that's currently what's slated. But one option we have is to go back to FERC, present our climate models, and explain how this is going to harm our community. And so that is an option that we've also identified as a board that we should work on pursuing. And then the other thing is not to save water, but it's to add a buffer of security for all of you and us in the community, and that's to raise our minimum storage carry forward target. So we historically don't go below 77,000 acre-feet in our reservoirs, so that if we have multi-year droughts, we are sure to be able to provide water to our treated water customers. So, but in this new reality, that might not be enough. And so we're looking at modeling how much should we raise our minimum carry forward storage so that we can be assured that we have adequate water for our customers. Okay, so we're going to take a minute and just, I think that, yeah. And can I answer any questions? Yeah.
I was with you all the way down to the FERC amount.
Okay.
I didn't understand the 7,000 versus 45,000, what that was.
Okay, good.
About.
Thank you. So the question is, talk more about what that FERC flow difference means. So when the way I look at this is when the license was established for our hydro plants back in the 60s and 70s, we didn't have as much information about environmental flows. And so they set what they thought was reasonable for the environmental flow. This is water that goes from our system into rivers and streams and cannot be stopped by us. We cannot resell it. We can't use that water. So when we go from, so of course today, there's a lot more information understood about the environment, the need for environmental water, and you see the stresses all over the system for the lack of environmental water. The question is, how much can we be expected to contribute from our little water district, and what makes sense to balance that environmental flow with the human need, our agricultural need, our need for animals. So that's, I hope, does that answer the question?
So right now, the old license said 7,000 goes over the dam for hydropower. And the new license says 45,000, so you're losing less storage? You're losing storage, is that?
We're losing our ability to sell, what is that, 38,000 acre-feet of water to sell 38,000 acre-feet of water to our customers. That's a lot, yeah. Yeah.
So I have a question about one of the options for storage you said is raising dams. Do we have any natural aquifers or any plans for underground water? Is that even a possibility in our area?
So the question is, could we do underground storage as a way to increase our water supply and maybe not have to raise dams? So that's a great question, and unfortunately the answer is not really within the district boundaries. So we are on a fractured rock aquifer. If you're in the Sacramento Valley, you are in, you have a subbasin underneath the ground that is an aquifer. So we don't have a way to inject or let water seep into a storage pool, which is what the valleys have. And so the possible way to get at that would be to, when we have excess water, to work an arrangement where we were injected into a subbasin and then get some exchange in some way from the agencies that access that subbasin. Probably totally confusing. But bottom line is we just don't have the substructure to support underground storage. Yeah. What, Rhea?
Who do you provide the raw water to?
Well, a whole lot of people. We provide quite a bit of water to the city of Grass Valley. Actually, we provide supplementary water to the city of Nevada City. We provide water to PCWA to support the city of Lincoln. We have so industrial areas use a lot of raw water. Our agricultural community uses a lot of raw water. So I talked to a rancher recently. He buys 80 miners inches of water. That's a lot of water. So, and then you have small private homes that use the raw water to irrigate a pasture, feed their animals, water their landscaping, that kind of thing.
And so they're 93% of your consumption.
Correct.
So it would seem they would be the folks to really focus on for conservation.
That's right.
Okay.
Well, and I'll mention, so you can rest assured, the cost for the projects is going to be borne by the people who access that water, it's not like spread, okay, treated water, you get to pay, we're not going to do it that way. 93% of our water is used by our raw water customers, and I'm a raw water customer. I have to be part of that purchase or conservation. Yeah.
I have two questions. One spinning off of what you just spoke about with raw water. And currently, raw water is sold by the miner's inch to at least the agricultural sector. Are you shifting towards selling it in a more metered way so that farmers can turn it on and off as they wish, rather than just running it through a pipe, so that they can use water more efficiently?
That is a great question, which is, have we considered piping or metering our raw water delivery system? And we did. The cost to pipe our canal system is somewhere in the order of $7 billion. Actually, I think I might be wrong on that. I think it might be 1.7 billion, but it was like, out of the question for now. And then we could meter all of the raw water accounts and do as Bob suggested. The problem is that, one, the technology isn't really as advanced as it needs to be. The orifice for the meter tends to get clogged up. We obviously have a massive territory where that needs to be covered. And the amount of water saved, we don't believe warrants, that one's, I think, $700 million to implement. So it's expensive, and it doesn't yield the savings that we would hope for. But we did look at it, and I think that's the important thing. We know what options kind of are financially out of the ballpark versus the water savings.
So second question, Everything you've spoken about, I believe, is contingent upon the current state of water rights in the state. And there's a risk, I believe, of the state changing water rights rules that would put some of this water at risk. Could you speak to that?
So the question is, how does the state's efforts or recent conversations about changing water right laws in California impact this discussion? And Bob is absolutely right. There were 3 bills pending before the state legislature this year that would have attempted to remove local water rights and put them under the control of the state. So none of those bills passed in a way that have any effect on us. The reality is that the water right laws have been heavily, heavily litigated. And if the state were to attempt to change this, there would be major pushback from water districts throughout California. I'm sure we would have some outside agencies also looking at this because this would be a bellwether potentially for other states. I think what our approach more broadly, though, is that we have to be, as much as we can, be part of a state solution. If we try to, kind of pull the blanket around our territory and say, too bad, so sad, you're over there, I don't think it's going to serve us well. And so we've got to see ways that we can partner and be part of a solution for the state. And so that's my belief, is that changes are going to happen. I mean, if you read about the Delta, there's such pressures on the Delta. And it's not just, those are things that we should care about as Californians. Yeah, we don't really influence or control it, but good gosh, if that water comes up the Delta too far, it's just horrific implications. And so anyway, I know go ahead.
Does NID work with the county as far as county policy? For instance, the county's encouraging a legal cannabis industry here, and have, providing grants for the transfer of illegal to legal and so on. And cannabis, for instance, as among the crops, is a high water crop, right? So are the county and NID policies sort of bumping heads on policy?
I would say that NID is not a land use authority. So we do not have the ability to direct to anyone, whether they grow cannabis, have cows, they have a herd of sheep, or whatever it is. We don't have a legal authority to, and so like the mine is another example of a classic controversy in our community. What with that, we did, our request to the county is that they put a bond issue, that they require the mine company to put a bond issue on. That is to protect the wells in that area. But answer to your question, not really.
Does the county seek your input about certain policies? Like, I'm just using cannabis as an example in a high water crop. Before they pass policies or look for grants and so on, do they consult with NID before they pass those policies?
No.
Why?
Well, I'll raise this question with the general manager and raise your concern. And
it's a legitimate concern. It just seems like left hand, right hand. I use my right hand when I say left.
Yeah. Yes.
I am one of the few who is not an NID customer. I live in the lovely Alta Sierra Ranches, where decisions about my possible water usage in the future will be decided not by me because we don't have a vote, but by you guys. So how can you assure me that we don't have to automatically become NID customers and that we can continue to use our well water?
Well, NID cannot force anyone to go into our system, either on the raw or treated water side. We've had a program where we have extended water lines into communities But that required the majority of the property owners in that community to want to get our treated water, and no one had to go on the system if they didn't want to.
That's new information, because I had been given other information a few years ago when this Centennial Dam was on the ballot. Okay, I'll just have to keep looking for more information.
Yeah, no, we cannot force anyone to be a customer. Yeah.
I'm on the other side of that, not being an NID customer, and what I wonder about is the water that we're getting from our wells going to dry up, and is that going to put more demand on NID for new customers wanting to come in? And do you look at that in any of your modeling, what that impact could be?
Part of our plan for water includes master plans for treated raw water, hydro facilities, et cetera. And part of that plan will look at what areas within our service territory are logical to potentially bring into the district at some point. But it has to be based on the community wanting to be part of NID, not NID saying you must be. So to your point, we don't do that.
But what I wonder about it, are you going to start getting so much demand from people who, suddenly are losing their well water and saying, we want to come in and be part of your system now, and are you going to have the wherewithal to weather that increase in demand?
Because treated water is so efficient, that is not going to be the issue. The issue is that it's, well, to be blunt, it's grossly expensive to expand water line systems. And we tend to have properties that are spread out. We're not like, for the most part, we're not like compact subdivisions. And so it's very expensive. And NID does not have the financial infrastructure to just expand lines here and there and everywhere. So it has to be very concerted. The property owners in that area have to want to be part of the district and have to pay for it, basically. But if my home was worth nothing without water, sign me up. Yeah.
How does stormwater fit into all of this? Stormwater, which is, the rain comes down, but then there's areas around here that are flooded, and do you consider stormwater at all?
So the question, do we consider stormwater? And I don't really know the answer to that question. Within the city limits, stormwater is not our kind of part of our purview. And where we are more out in the rural areas, the water tends to flow into natural drainages and our canals, so we take advantage of that. But in terms of stormwater within the cities, no, we don't.
Would that be difficult though, if that was additional water that could be used? Are the cities interested in this, or are you interested?
I would be surprised if the cities weren't engaged with stormwater reclamation. I mean, that's very common in most cities now. But I don't know the background on that.
And also one more thing. Do salmon have any say in this? The salmon according to different cultures, very important. So I just didn't know, does that work into your decision?
So the question is, do the salmon have a say in this conversation? And that's where that environmental water comes in, that FERC license, that's where that comes in. So under the new license, those flows would be dramatically more for the fish, for the delta, for the yellow-legged frog, for all of the environment that benefits from natural flow of water. Yeah.
All around the country, drinking water is pulled out of a river, treated, goes back into the river as wastewater, pulled out downstream for drinking water, treated, back in. What about using treated wastewater from our sewage treatment plants as the part of the augmentation for the FERC? you know, not, it's being used, it is expensive, but it's being done in San Diego, it's being done all over the country.
Yeah.
And the cost of water is only going to go up as the demand goes up.
Right, and there's a lot of uses you can put that reclaimed water to good purpose. Yeah.
Raw water customers could use that for their.
Absolutely. So that might reflect a partnership with Grass Valley and Nevada cities where they do that water treatment and wastewater treatment and get it back into our system. Absolutely.
And are you adjusting that or thinking about that at all?
We're talking about partnerships because going back to the question about the sub-basin and being able to refill, so that's about collaboration and partnership. So there's lots of opportunities for that. Yeah. I'm going to,
Just a couple more and then we want to.
okay. Yeah, we have a table activity that we wanted you to do. So Karen?
I don't think you can answer this, but I get very upset that alfalfa farmers are using, and cotton farmers are using an awful lot of water, and more economic, more profitable crops could use that water. I don't know any way we could account for those differences economically. What is the yield for those farms? Because that's a big water user in the state of California.
So the observation is made that some California crops use a lot more water than others, and yes, you're right, they do. I think there's going to be a matter of water economics.
Yes.
You know, I really think that's coming, and
You do it.
well, you can't afford it. You either don't get access to water, or you can't afford it. And with the laws now on the sub-basin management, this is a wonderful thing the state did. It's slow to implement, but in my opinion, you know, with the aquifers being drained completely, this is a really important thing that the state did. But there's going to be water economics. Can't afford it. So I will take one last question, and then we're going to go.
Kind of following up on what Karen just said, irrigated pasture has always been the thing that I consider. It doesn't really yield a lot of jobs. I mean, unlike cotton and alfalfa. I mean, so to me, I mean, what do you, if we're going to cut water, especially agricultural water, it seems irrigated pasture is a place to look at. Amen.
Well, you know, see, this is another. I just reemphasize, we don't have a say in how people use water. There's wise uses of water, and I wouldn't classify anything as wise or unwise, but ultimately water economics will play a big role in changing, I think, our demand forecast.
Could we tax those crops?
I cannot. Okay, so with that, we have a table exercise that I would appreciate you giving some thought to at your table. So one of the items that we are going to go forward in analyzing is the Centennial Dam. This will increase storage by 40%, but it's very expensive and it will be paid for by ratepayers. There's that positive impact on water storage, and we would be able to pretty assuredly meet the human needs and agricultural needs and others reliant on raw water. But there's significant environmental impacts, cultural and recreation impacts, plus that 6 miles of that Bear River is an area that many people cherish. So these are real kind of push-pull, right? So the question for you is, how would you evaluate these? What's most important to you? How would you evaluate this? What are acceptable and unacceptable compromises, and why? I'm going to collect those. We'll have some report outs, but I'm going to collect this so that I can compile your ideas and thoughts, and I'll share them with the board and management.
Where is the Centennial Dam?
The Centennial Dam, if I could have everybody's attention for one more minute. The Centennial Dam location is below Rawlins. It's basically below Rawlins Reservoir and above Combi Reservoir. So in that, you know, that area where the, it's Dog Bar crosses the river, that will be inundated.
And how long would it take to build?
4 to 5 years.
Karen, do we have the water, do we have the land?
We have some of the land, but not all that would be required.